Setting ourselves apart and being maybe a little bit different and unique is something that I consistently deal with in my own business. How am I different than all of the other businesses out there? And I've had to take the time to really identify some of those things for myself. So today, Greg and I together are talking about this topic. And I really wanted to bring him in on this. We're together once a month on this podcast because he's had such a business background with sales and marketing, and he's seen a lot as well. And we've talked about this quite a bit. So we're going to have a conversation, but also you'll leave with some principles today that I hope will help you in your lives and in your businesses. So stay tuned with us today as we approach this really very relevant and important topic. This podcast is brought to you by DJ Works Media and HalftimeSuccess.com, offering resources and insights for those at mid-career or the halftime of life. Explore our diverse categories, including courses, coaching, health, music, software, and travel. We're here to help you make this stage of life your best ever. So get our new articles, downloads, and podcasts by signing up for weekly updates at goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Well, hello. Thank you for joining me here, Greg, as we really approach this very fascinating topic on commoditization, being different, unique. So thanks for joining me.
Sure.
So,
Good to be here.
yes. And we've talked a lot about this topic. So it's very helpful for us to have a conversation here because I constantly go back to this. How am I different in my business? It seems like I've started areas of my business, whether it was doing a music show or whether it's talking to those at mid-career, halftime of life. All of a sudden, there's these slew of other people that are doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I set myself? What is my uniqueness? So that's the conversation that we're
Well, what
have.
was interesting about that is that you were, pioneer in like 3 different areas.
Yeah.
So you were on the right track.
Yes.
It's, I think, you get ahead and you build something, but you always got to be looking forward because the market's going to catch up.
Yeah. And that's the key. The market catches up. So
Right.
Then what do you do? So, well, let's talk about a couple of the principles here and how we can, why don't you approach maybe,
Well, as a financial advisor, when I was working, the thing you run into is there's 100,000 financial advisors, and the world tends to say, "Well, you're a financial advisor, period," and that there's nothing unique about you at all. So the challenge was always, how do I make myself unique? And some of it was that I read more than everybody else. Some of it was that I'd put good insight into newsletters. Later, I was doing videos where people could get to know me on video a little bit and build some sort of affinity if they wanted to come for a personal meeting. So, you've got to figure out how do you bring value. And the reality is in every service, the value you bring is you. And so you want to make yourself valuable. And usually that comes through learning. That comes through learning how to give better presentations, dressing right. That doesn't mean fancy. It just means right for the occasion. It means becoming a really good listener so that people genuinely feel like you understand them. So it's a very soft science, the service industry.
Yeah.
And, because Deb and I were both in the service industries, we tend to critique service industries a little bit more harshly than we do, other things. I think we both had an experience last week where we were just going, wow, that is like they didn't even recognize we were here.
Yeah. Yeah.
or care,
Yeah.
which is odd for a service industry.
Right.
If you're providing a product,
Mhm.
then the onus is on you to constantly talk about why your product is different than all the other products. And later in the podcast, we'll get
Mhm.
into building your story brand and
Right.
how that fits into your story. But
Mhm.
up front, I think the main point is that the marketplace tends to, because they don't want to think real hard, um, push you into a commodity. So however you started, however unique,
Mhm.
they want to say that, oh, you're a hairstylist,
Yes.
or that you're a restaurant, or that they come up with a word to
Mhm.
describe what you are,
Yeah.
even though you're much more than that.
Right.
And so that's this push and tug that's constantly going. And, it gets down to questions like, you need a car.
Yeah.
Well, you can get a Kia or you can get a Porsche.
Mhm.
Are those both just cars, or is there actually something different about them?
Yeah.
You need gasoline.
Mhm.
Well, is gas? Is the gas at Wawa the same as it is at Chevron?
Now, if people don't know what Wawa is, tell them what
No,
Wawa. Yeah.
everybody knows what Wawa is. It's a
Yeah.
convenience store
Yeah.
along the
On the East
East
Coast,
Coast.
yeah.
So,
If you're on the West Coast, you might not know. So,
or is the Catholic Church the same as the New Life Christian Fellowship on the
yeah,
corner?
yeah,
Are all churches really the same?
mhm,
Is your podcast just a podcast?
yeah,
Are all podcasts the
mhm,
same?
yeah,
I mean, is what Joe Rogan does the same as what Winston Chambers does?
mhm,
Yeah, uh,
mhm, yeah,
you know, at some point, quality needs to break through, and you can prove it first by actually providing it.
mhm,
But
right,
second, we're going to get into branding, and
right,
your job is going to
mhm,
be able to convince the world that you are not merely just another word.
right. And I like that you mentioned quality because quality has to be there.
Yeah,
Otherwise, people just won't take you seriously
right.
at all. But
One of the things Debbie and I used to laugh at was there's a Christian, I mean, not a Christian, a professional speakers organization.
yes, uh-huh,
And, after Deb became a speaker, naturally
mhm,
everybody else wanted to become a speaker.
yes,
And the interesting thing is they bring in speakers to teach other speakers how to become speakers.
yes,
And the amazing thing is how little there was on the fact that you got to have something to say. Yeah, and they talked about marketing. They talked about
yeah,
hairstyle. They talked
mhm,
about what kind of suit you wear.
mhm,
They talked about how to use a mic, uh, all of which is important. But the
mhm,
most important thing
mhm,
is that you actually have something to say.
yes,
And I'm going to guess, and this may
yeah,
be an exaggeration, but
yeah.
90% of them didn't have anything to say.
Well, and
Mm,
and I think I learned through that too. It's by writing books too. You need to have some sort of unique value proposition.
yeah,
What do you
right.
what do you want people to take away with? What's the takeaway? How do they apply that right now? Podcasts have helped me. What can you apply right now? I ask my guests, what is one takeaway? If people are listening, they're not reading the articles, they're just listening. What can some action point? So I think all of us need to, in our businesses, I didn't know hardly anything. Actually, the speaking business is what taught me more how to run a business because once I really got into it,
Well,
because I
I
understood
mean,
that a
your
little more.
music business I thought was pretty
Yeah.
well run.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in building it, I didn't have to. Well, although I did, I worked in showcasing, lining up showcases across the
Sure.
country, pretty
Right.
much, and I booked others, and I did a lot of work on that. Did a lot of writing, a lot of projects. Yeah, so it did build that way. I
And,
just didn't really
yeah,
realize I was doing all of that as part of the. It
yeah,
wasn't this big
you maybe
plan.
became a little more systematic when
Yes.
you became a professional speaker
Yeah.
and
I put
educator.
it into
Yeah.
a system is what I did because otherwise I was just I just kept going, So, yeah. So, but I think having that unique value proposition, and it's something that we need to keep evaluating, I think, because the market does come, it's commoditized.
Well, we jumped ahead a little bit
Yes,
because
we
you
did.
brought up value proposition.
Yes, I
And,
did.
one of the things you did well as a
Mhm.
speaker is when you were considering going into it, you
Mhm.
developed your value proposition
Right.
first.
Mhm.
And that's kind of kept you steady
Mhm.
and
Right.
driving.
Really does.
So,
Mhm.
yeah, so you want to jump into the story here?
No, let's talk about because we were going to talk about maybe some of the brands that start being commoditized. And maybe we had some illustrations there, right? With
Well, I mean, is the clothes at Marshall's the same as it is at H&M? Or,
yeah,
and I talked about Porsche and Kia.
right,
Um,
mhm,
um, but, I'm sure commoditization is something that's resonating with everybody listening to
right,
this.
yeah, I think
Um,
so.
that you're
Mhm.
just another employee, that you're just another business.
Mhm.
Sometimes our government tends to treat us as
Mhm.
just, another taxpayer.
Yeah,
Um, and really being heard as an
mhm,
individual is important and an opportunity.
yeah,
So, whether you're a landscaper
mm,
or somebody coming out with a new high tech drone,
mhm,
um, you may be the coolest thing on the block today,
mhm.
but I can guarantee you in 3 years, there's going to be, 1,400 people coming up with high
Yeah,
tech drones.
yeah,
And,
mhm,
they'll reduce your landscaping business to a mow and blow.
yeah.
So,
Mhm.
it's just, yeah. How are you different?
And I think some of that, a lot of that, does come back to story and how a belief system that like, do people feel understood as they are, meeting some issues in their lives? You
Yeah.
know?
Debbie's value proposition is that she was tremendously frustrated
Mhm.
that there was, thousands of people her age that were sitting on their gifts and experience.
Yes,
They were
not
just
using them.
stuck
Mhm.
at their offices.
Right.
They knew they could bring more to life,
Mhm.
but fear
Yes,
basically had
a
locked
lot of
them
fear.
in. And she had
Mhm.
already developed a music business, and now she was developing a writing and speaking
Mhm.
business,
Mhm.
and knew that fear
Mhm.
didn't need to keep you locked in.
No, I would have
And
never done another project. I would have never recorded a musical. I would never produced all of that. Would
right.
have if fear held me. Yeah.
So the way her story
Mhm.
develops in marketing is
Mhm.
is that she's somebody that's always been other centered,
Mhm.
somebody who also recognizes,
Mhm.
how to start a project, how to develop a project, and how to finish a project,
Right.
and she wants to share those ideas with people who are stuck.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
anytime you're trying to market, there's
Mhm.
two big things to center on:
Mhm.
either people's pain or
Mhm.
or fears,
Yes.
or their
That's
fantasies
true.
or their dreams.
Yes, their
You
dreams.
know,
Mhm. Mhm.
you got to touch one of those because
Mhm.
those are the things that motivate us.
Yeah.
And fear is the biggest motivator, but
Yeah.
dreams and fantasies is another strong motivator. You don't go on a luxury vacation because you're afraid.
No.
You go on a luxury vacation because you've been dreaming about this thing for forever. When you spend too much money for a dishwasher because yours broke, that's being motivated out of fear. And
Did you have to do dishes by hand for the next
yeah, yeah.
month or two?
So
Yeah.
so Debbie, her value practice
Mhm.
was about being stuck, and
Right.
that's somebody's pain,
Mhm.
somebody's fear.
Yeah.
And then on top of being stuck, you
Mhm.
think of all the fear that's keeping you stuck there. Like
Yes,
you're
that's a big deal.
incapable of learning tech.
Right.
You're incapable
Mhm.
of, developing a website. You're incapable of, taking what you learned at work and
Mhm.
developing your own product.
Mhm.
It's all this mind trash
Yeah.
that, you just need to work through. And that's what Debbie's
Yes.
podcast help you do is
Yes.
get released from all of it.
Yeah. And I talk a lot about it. I mean, there are so many episodes I've talked about this. And we were just talking just about this particular episode too. And I said, I've had to review through a lot of these principles, even in writing this next book I'm working on, because I was talking about how to begin the book and some of my main value propositions to it, and realized I need to talk about AI because a new way of doing business and in moving ahead and defining your best life, your best, what's ahead. As people are defining that at mid-career, halftime, they want to do something different. They want to be more significant. Maybe they want to start that over. But there's a lot of fear thinking, well, if I start this, then in a year, the AI is going to take over, or the robots are going to start doing it, or, there's going to be a million people. All of that fear holds people behind. And thinking, well, I'm not that good in tech. I'm not going to even be able to learn anything. That is not true.
Right.
That is not true.
Right.
Dispelling some of that and understanding how it works is what I have started really working hard on the beginning chapters of that book to be able to dispel some of that fear. So that is part of what our responsibility is in not being a commodity, is to be able to dispel fear, to be able to have people trust what we have to say, especially if we are a speaker or if we are a content creator, if we are a coach. So I work with a lot of coaches as well. And it's who's going to believe you? Who's going to trust you? Because there's a lot of so-called experts out there. And how do you break down some of this expert sort of knowledge that somebody got from somebody else and thinking, well, that doesn't make sense. This is like let's put some common sense into this.
Right.
So you have to be trusted for that. So you have to understand how to dispel a little bit of that fear. Was that a good rabbit trail?
That's good.
Yes. But that goes along with a story and how to create a story about what you are talking about or what you are building, and how that your particular story, your particular experience. I mean, I listen to these podcasts all the time, and How I Built It. That's a great podcast, by the way, of how a plug
Who's that by?
I even forget who does it, but hosted by. But it's a great podcast.
It's called How
I Built It.
How
I Built This. Yes, How I Built This. But it talks about a lot of the evaluating businesses, and story is very important. It's whether you're trying to build maybe a face face cream, some sort of lotions and all of that are ethically, and they're good for the skin. They don't have a lot of preservatives, whether it's energy bars. I mean, it talks about a lot of different brands.
Yeah, I mean, those are two good examples.
Yeah.
So, face cream.
Yeah.
Is it just a face cream?
Yeah.
And what's the story behind this? Yeah. And being able to tell what about your story drove you to be compelled to create a new face cream, allows people to enter into your experience and to see if what they're going through, their pain, matches up with your experience, and they become a willing customer. The same thing with we knew somebody who created an energy bar.
Yes.
Again, commodity, right?
Yes.
Energy bar.
A million.
It's not my energy bar. But it's so being able to tell your story and not why your energy bar is so much better, but what about you compelled you to create an energy bar. Right. That's the story.
Yeah. When I hear a story of someone who did create a face cream because they were having skin problems, maybe had some eczema, they have something happening.
And nothing else could fix it.
And they're like 15 and they're experimenting in their mom's kitchen, and all of a sudden they mixed something together that all of a sudden cleared up their face. Well, now they say, oh, I'll start putting that in little containers. And now, all of my friends want to buy it. And, okay. So now I can, you start hearing those little stories about these.
That's a great story.
Yeah. There's illustration after illustration of this. And these are the stories we want to hear. People like to hear my story about what I come from in the music business.
Sure.
And they're like, oh, you were up for Grammys? Or, those people? Well, these are normal people that work extremely hard and work really hard to get there. And I have a couple of those interviews coming up with some of my great friends that I've stayed in contact through, even though I haven't put out an album in at least a couple of years, probably about 10. But it's the story behind what they're doing as well, which is really wonderful. Why do they keep doing this? It's a hard business. So, but it's fascinating.
But to bring it back to commodity,
yes,
is telling your story about why you felt compelled to bring the service or product to the market.
Right.
And what is it that keeps you still fueled to continue to provide the service or product? That's what we're trying to get at, because you need to tell that story today, because there's 1,200 other people that are selling an energy bar, or selling a face cream, or selling landscape services, or providing computer technology backup services. As soon as you get stuck in that phrase, try to figure out a way to explain why you're more than that.
And interesting when you brought that up with the story and us telling our own story, and even what I just shared, I was almost afraid to tell my story because I thought people wouldn't take me seriously, because I've worked, but I've also raised a family. So sometimes when you have made the decision, when I made the decision not to tour full time, I have friends who've toured with major artists and they've gone out on their own, but they didn't make the decisions that I had to have our family and not tour full time. It doesn't make my credits any less as a writer or anything else.
Well, and it makes you more relatable than a lot of people.
But I went through some stages of not feeling like, well, I didn't have corporate experience. I wasn't on the road for 10 years, that sort of thing. You kind of start discounting what your own story is. You need to do some soul searching and understand what your story is. People do want to hear it. They want to trust you. They want to trust your product. They want to trust your system. And I know the same thing. I'm consistently evaluating, why would my message be able to help others? Are they going to take me seriously at this stage? Yes, they do take me seriously. I know enough about tech to help people not be afraid of it.
Right.
I don't need to know every new little tool. There's no time to do that. It's moving too fast. I don't need to know. I need to be able to share the main principles to help people not be afraid of that, and then put that in, implement that. There's a lot of wonderful tools, but to at least help them not to be afraid of that.
Right.
Yeah, on that. So what are some other steps people can start taking here to, when they're thinking about their story? Okay, that's a big one. And maybe some examples. Why do we go to Starbucks? Because there's a certain feel that you get from that business too. So,
well, yeah, people buy experiences, they buy solutions, they buy, remedies. So, you're not going to Starbucks to buy a cup of coffee. You used to go to Starbucks by experience, and now I think. Yeah, I don't get the same experience as I used to. So the market's open to other coffee shops to, deliver that experience.
Right. Although I always know they have internet. So
that's true. They do
so if your power is out, you always know you can go there. That's true.
But again, if people are shopping for resolution to their pain, or they're shopping for to have their dream fulfilled, what you need to figure out is, am I providing remedies? Am I providing, dream fulfillment? And how do I tell people about that?
Right.
I think another thing is probably step down and go, if I'm a commodity, if they were looking you up, doing a Google search for your service or your product, what does Google stick you under? And then come up with 3 ways that you can be different. And in my business as a financial advisor, the 3 things I came up with was one, I was going to read more and
Mm-hmm.
quantify it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to make sure that I was more well read than 90% of all the other financial advisors.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just started reading. I kept track of it, and I'd posted my newsletter, which is the second thing that I came up with was the newsletter. But I somewhere in the newsletter, I buried in the stuff would be of the 500 pages that I've read this month. Here's what I came up with, or maybe I phrased it slightly different, but I wanted to make sure that everybody knew I was staying on top of, not only the market, but financial laws and how they apply to our planning and that kind of stuff. And then the third thing was videos.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that easily made me different than 90% of all the other advisors. And the thing that was good about videos is in any service business, you are the product.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody sits down with you, they want your advice. They want to know that they're listened to, and they want to enjoy working with you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
As simple as it is.
Right.
And in a service business, they want a relationship with you. They want to feel like they can trust you. Right. So, marketing is getting people in front of you for the first time.
Yeah.
All the work is on the first time. And if you do a horrible job of the follow-up call, then shame on you, because you spend 90% of your energy and money getting that first interview. So anyway, you got to figure out those three things. If you've got a product, and it's Google has squished you down into whatever kind of widget it is. Now, what are the three things that are driving you to stay in business that are part of your story that make your product different, a better value at whatever price you're charging?
Yeah.
So
I think that's a great application. If people can walk away from this podcast, say, okay, how can I evaluate three things? And not going through, what are my three things? I mean, this is the same thing I evaluate consistently in my own business. What are my three things? Well, of course, content. I create a lot of content because I love content, to be able to create. I'm a creator, consistent. And then using video, it was the same thing. But I read a lot as well, but I write a lot, but that's right within content. But also putting together systems. That's another thing that I do fairly well is because that's why I do a lot of downloads and provide a lot of free content for people that they can just have this content. You don't need to, sign up for anything. You don't, but I want to be able to give enough that people feel like, well, she's not going to just take advantage of me, and consistency. So that's one of my all-time, I feel like if you're consistent and persistent, I'm going to finish the race. So anyway. Right. So, well, what's some sort of takeaway here that you would have, as well as those?
That was my best takeaway.
Yeah, that was actually a great takeaway. So if you have listened to this all the way through, and you are saying, okay, what are the three things? How am I different?
Yep.
If I'm a clothes manufacturer, how am I different than anybody else? If I am, if I do make energy bars, how is my energy bar different than everybody else's? If I'm a speaker, how, if I'm talking about a certain topic, leadership, how many leadership speakers are there? Like almost everybody talks about, they talk, but what is your twist on that? What have you written about leadership? How is that a little bit different?
Well, and what part of your life story actually involved successfully leading anything?
Yeah. And I love the things I love listening to are unique stories. Okay, I had to really demonstrate leadership when I was manning a SEAL team, or I was, jumping out of. I mean, all of a sudden, that's caught my interest. That's different, and to be able to even be at that level. So that's to where your story is so important. Don't discount it. Because I discounted my story for some years thinking, well, people are not going to want to hear that. Of course they want to hear that. They want to hear what my background is and why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Right.
And it's very interesting, and it might feel old to you, but it's not going to be old to everybody else. So thank you all for joining
Yeah. Good to
us.
see you guys.
Yes. And we'll look forward to being with you again together next month. And make sure you get the articles that come out. I do write an article about every one that we do together, goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. And of course, I have other websites as well and books. So there's plenty of content that you can always peruse, and plenty of free stuff too, and musicals. So make sure you check all of those out. So thanks again for joining us, and I look forward to being with you all again next time. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. We'd love it if you'd share and follow us to not miss a single show, and even write a review. You can also find all of our articles, products, and links at womenathalftime.com.